For those of you who may not know me, my name is Karl Ingersoll, and I served as a pastor with the Wesleyan denomination for 34 years, pastored in the United States for the first 10, and been back in Canada since 1985. And my heartbeat for the church has changed dramatically over the years. And we see today that the church is growing all over the world in ways that those of us in North America can hardly imagine, and growing in adversity, growing in persecution. And so today we in North America, we sort of have an opposite scenario. We have a church where we have respect and we have favor. No one really bothers us too much for whatever profession that we make in terms of our faith. And yet we're having very little impact on our society as a whole. As a matter of fact, it's more than just churches failing to keep pace and maybe being old-fashioned, I think, because it's not just old-fashioned churches that seem to be becoming more and more marginalized in Canada today. And so today I'm involved in sort of a grassroots approach, a sort of reconfiguring relative to what church could and should be about. It sort of arises from the idea that before church is anything else, it's the people of God. It's not primarily a building or a service time or a program or a denomination or a collection of beliefs. It's something much, much, much more significant than that. Church is the people of God. And today that people, those people, the children of God, are alive and well in many different organized churches. And the family of God, the people of God, is much broader than any particular expression, local expression of it. So we've started something called the 247 Network, and it's a counterintuitive type of an approach to church where most everything that people like myself have learned about pastoring is just sort of set aside in favor of something much more otherworldly. For instance, I've been trained as a pastor in how to give organizational leadership to a church, and I would have to confess that when I look at my years in the ministry and compare them with the way that the church has organically grown around the world, that all of our good organizational techniques may really not have profited us that much. So we've got this idea that maybe we should try to follow Christ as the head of the church and really believe that he still wants to direct the affairs of the church today in a supernatural way, not the kinds of programs that we put on or the kinds of events that we stage to try to get people to come to with a hope that maybe they'll discover some kind of transformational faith. But it's more than that. It's the idea that where God's people come together, everyone has something to bring to the table. There are giftings, there are talents and abilities, there are networks of relationships that can be tapped into and can become inclusive sorts of things as those networks are expanded. So the 247 Network is a linkage, really. It doesn't center around a denominational statement. We just have this idea that it's about Jesus. And the farther away that we get from that, the more problems there are. And when church is about Jesus, it's a unifying factor. When church becomes about all the tangential sorts of beliefs and practices that differentiate us from one another, then there's a ton of potential for conflict and all those kinds of things. So it's about Jesus. And it's about what Jesus wants to do in North America today. And it's about the fact that that can happen without huge budgets. As a matter of fact, it can happen in a way that that the people who are part of the church can take the money that they normally would give to support an organization, and they can actually use that money to serve other people in the name of Christ. Like Matthew chapter 25, the idea that as much as we do unto the least of these, we actually do unto Christ himself. And so it's not a place, it's not a location, it's about being. It's about a being, a way of looking, a way of seeing, a way of living that is so intertwined in the ordinary everyday affairs of life, the 24/7 affairs of life, that the church is at work all the time. The people of God are having an impact all the time. And we have, in that linkage, we have numbers of other Christian people who have just said, we want to see the broader panorama of who God is and how he's working in the world. And so we're going to step outside the four walls of the church. We're going to get outside of whatever boxes that we've been living in spiritually that have diminished our understanding of God. And not only people are a part of this, there are also ministries that are part of this too. For instance, a church in town called Hope Cafe was actually a pre-existing expression of two home churches that met together on Sunday for a fellowship time. And they deliberately didn't call themselves a church. They called themselves the cafe because they felt like the real important thing that was to happen was the meetings that were to be held in the home, and then the optional thing was the gathering on Sunday morning. And so that home church, that pre-existent home church, is a part of our 247 network, which incidentally, I guess I forgot to mention that earlier. The 247 network comes from Acts 2, verse 47. The Lord added to the church daily those who were being saved. And also, it relates to the idea of being 24/7 Christian as opposed to a 1.51 Christian. And that, of course, is a description of the type of person who believes that the church is something that they attend for 90 minutes on Sunday morning, and then all the rest of their lives is theirs to do with as they please. So this is just sort of an introductory video that we're doing this morning. We want to do some podcasts in the future, which may be somewhat rougher than this turns out to be. And those podcasts largely will be conversations between people who are part of the network, and storytelling. That's one thing we're big on around here, is people telling their stories and sharing what God is doing in their lives. And you can track along with us. You can check out our website, www.247network.ca, and follow the latest news and events, or connect with other people. You'll find on that website a list of the home churches, which are largely in Fredericton. There are some in Woodstock and Heartland and Moncton, and just within the past month, there have been two new home churches started. One in Amsterdam, Holland, by a man who was on a business trip, and another started in Cuba by a young mother and her daughter who were there on a missions trip. So we believe that the church is a very viral expression of the kingdom of God, and that churches can grow in many, many different ways, in many different places, in many different kinds of formats. And so we just hope that you follow the 247 network. Contact us through email if you'd like more information. We'd love to be able to respond to you, and thanks very much.